All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, of course. I've got to wait for the 10 to 15 second delay. Happy Thursday, says Antic100 or Ontic100. Yeah, Ontic. Happy Thursday, everybody. What a blessed day. Let's see. Yeah, I'm live over there. I also see Sup Ma Bitches by Tech Gorilla on Rumble, and Ahoy and Clank by Flyer Rod, and Morning Clankton by Cam2425IA, of course, a frequent commenter. We've got lots and lots of good shit to cover today, starting, of course, with the FBI search of Joe Biden's home. But we've got much, much more to cover than that. One of the stories, one of the main stories, actually, from Vermont. This has gone viral, by the way, online, and I love to see it. It's not a huge surprise because it's the state of Vermont, so we'll be talking about that. Crazy shit. Also a story from the Netherlands involving mad cow disease. Don't worry, I will inform you about mad cow if you don't know anything about that particular problem. Don't worry too much. It would be my base advice. Don't panic. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So the first story, we'll get right into it. FBI searching Biden home in Rehoboth, Delaware in classified documents probe. Of course, this was updated later. They searched the home. They didn't find anything. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't find another example throughout U.S. history where the FBI allowed a person, a potential perp, by the way. There were classified documents there. They're not necessarily declassed. They're not necessarily even capable of being declassed. I don't know of any other situation in which the FBI has given several weeks to a person and their legal counsel to search their own residence for stuff before the FBI comes in. Of course, we have a rubber stamp FISA warrant process. They could have come in effectively within 48, 72 hours very easily. I would like to ask people something. Is there a reason why we shouldn't assume, because the FBI does assume this in every other case, that the perp may attempt to cover their ass by removing sensitive material from their own home? Of course, that would be standard. That'd be par for the course. If you have the latitude to do so, you would do so too. Oh shit, I broke a federal law. Well, the FBI is going to wait until I give them the go-ahead, the explicit advice that they should search my residence. Well, I'll just have my lawyers take these papers to a different location and maybe get rid of them or something like that. That's what's happening. It's shenanigans from top to bottom. The fact that the entire legacy media, I talked about this morning, the fact that the entire legacy media had headlines ready for this story, apparently ahead of time, because it does take some time at least to edit material, speaks to the fact that they knew that Biden was going to have the FBI at his home. He knew that there would be nothing there because everything looks very pre-written, very, very structured in that manner. And he did know that because, of course, his attorneys told him, okay, big guy, you can have the FBI in now. We've gone through all the documents. Anything, hush, hush, shh, be very quiet about this. Anything that was particularly bad, we already shipped elsewhere. Now, that's what happened. It is a cover-up. The FBI is colluding with the Biden administration. It is a massive crime, a massive scandal. But you're probably not going to get any evidence of that because they gave him so much latitude. That being said, I still think that the general MO of the legacy media, the neolibs, et cetera, is to try to throw Biden under the bus over the story. It's just that they're shielding him from any criminal probe. They don't want a criminal probe. They want to pressure Biden to step down organically by decreasing his support or something like that. They want to retire him, put him out to pasture, but he was a good one. Well, he did a good job, but, at the end of the day, we've got this scandal. It's not a real scandal, but the public cares about it, so we've got to put him out to pasture. By the way, Donald Trump did worse, so ha, ha, ha. That's the whole point of this. They want to block a criminal probe by making sure that he had time to remove all incriminating material from his home, which probably other former presidents have too. I think Clinton and Bush already weighed in. They had conducted probes of their own belongings to make sure, hey, did I take my homework home with me? I'm not exactly sure. It was a long time ago. I can't remember whether I took a bunch of classified shit when I left the White House. I guarantee Clinton did. They're still lying around. Yeah, Hillary did this. She had all sorts of classified bullshit on her private server. I have no reason to believe that they didn't, but they don't have to worry about an FBI raid. Only Trump has to worry because he's the only one that actually opposes the Uniparty. Who lover? Hey, Sticks, my girlfriend is new to paganism, and I was wondering if you'd recommend any of your books for that subject. Thanks. Love the show. You're awesome. If you go to the Tarl Warwick Books blog on either WordPress or Blogspot, you can find many materials. Some of them are pagan in nature. Mostly, I think, under the academic header. I do have a European paganism work, though, a compilation. I think that's under my work specifically. Captain Cannabis, good morning to you, Sticks. Shout out to Alex, who can never catch this live. I think that's going to become the next fucking Sticks meme. The Agal Faces. Hi, darling Sticks. When I notice that woke culture is barely starting to diminish, when will it stop being the norm? 2025? Early 2030s? Woke culture technically began over a century ago during the anarchist art period of the 1900s, just to be clear. It's not going anywhere. It's an eternal struggle. You will always struggle against wokeness and other forms of authoritarianism and bigotry. They will never go away because they are ingrained in humanity. Red Muskrat, couldn't Obama have declassified Biden's docs? Technically, but he hasn't weighed in on it now, has he? There's a reason he's not talking about this particular issue at the moment. Mike Hunt, do you think Christianity will revive or die out? I think there will be sub-revivals. Christianity is not going anywhere, which is fine. It will change form, though. You see that right now in Catholicism. Catholicism is turning into a woke corporate religion, whereas 100 years ago it was relatively anti-woke, just to be clear. Yeah, the FBI searches. It doesn't raid. It just very politely shows up, a couple of agents, no firearms or anything. Hey, we got a call that we're supposed to search the property for things with classified headers. Oh, you've already gone through everything? Well, that makes our job easier. Hey, we'll just be here like 25 minutes or something. We're just going to scope around through the bookshelves or something. I guarantee they didn't toss things around and put them out on the floor with rulers and shit like that to photograph them like they did at the Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. Just a second here. By the way, there are almost as many people watching on Rumble right now as watching on YouTube. Again, I am being algorithmically throttled to the max by YouTube. I am being promoted by Rumble. Very interesting. Eric writes, doesn't matter what wasn't declassified. At the time he took it, it was illegal. No two ways about it. For the Senate documents, yeah, indeed, absolutely. And he's like, well, come on, man. There's nothing there. Yeah. John Bosworth, I don't see the Rumble stream. Well, it's on my channel. You can search that up. Sticks Hexenhammer 666. Usually my moniker, unless somebody else has nicked it in order to try to troll me. Sebastian Monroe, wish me luck. Today I interview for a promotion to a job in the office and off the plant floor with ability to listen at work. Best is yet to come. Good luck, my man. I think you will get the position. That is my official prediction. So when you're interviewing, buck up, shake the hand firmly. Ryan McDonald, USA. Puxatawny Phil, the Pennsylvanian groundhog saw his shadow for 6 more weeks of winter. Any Dutch pagan connection to this American tradition? I don't think so, although the Pennsylvanian Dutch actually were the ones that originated Homan's powwows, which was an excellent grimoire, you could call it, from the early 1800s. Look up Homan's powwow sometime. It's a fascinating work. Null hypothesis. It's a Groundhog Day miracle. Hunter Biden claims ownership of his laptop. Hunter's lawyers threaten to sue computer shop owner. I did see that, but it's not really relevant because it's a dead case. He ceded that property under the rules that were explicitly signed off on at the computer shop. So he does not have a case. Dr. Zeodin. Is it snowing in the Netherlands? It is in southern Germany. No, it's almost 50 degrees and just lightly raining at the moment. Typical drizzly weather. Next news story. This is the one from Vermont. Planned Parenthood political arm blasts white women. Calls for the elimination of women in abortion advocacy. Now, I shit you not. This is actually real. Planned Parenthood's political arm said the term female anatomy should not be used. And this comes from Vermont's Planned Parenthood arm, by the way. My home state, It's not a surprise that they would be the ones to do this. I will qualify this by saying I am pro-choice. There are exceptions involved there. I don't think late-term abortion is a good thing. I consider it to be immoral to abort after viability. That being said, I do support a woman's right to choose. There are rapes. There are cases where someone makes a terrible mistake. They're 16 years old, etc. So there's my qualifier. And some of you will be pissed off at that. I'm aware of this fact. I know that some people in my audience happen to disagree and deviate from my beliefs on abortion, much like they do gay rights or anything else that I talk about. Other than guns, I've noticed. On that, everyone seems to be on board. Anyway, there's access to abortion. I'm just going to quote this, is an intersectional issue. A video on the Action Fund's TikTok said, the most woke and bullshit of sites run literally by communists. Our language needs to acknowledge these intersections. It said women's health care should be referred to as reproductive health care. Women's choice should be a person's choice. Women's right should be referred to as a human right. Feminine hygiene products should be referred to as menstrual products. It adds that the term female anatomy should not be used. Instead, the terms ovaries and vagina should be used instead. So, in the state of Vermont, Planned Parenthood has officially gone too woke for me to support them. Again, as I'm pro-choice, I have no problem. I think I have a Planned Parenthood sticker literally on the fucking window in the office in Rutland still after all these years. I have no problem with them. They do things other than abortions too, like, STD screening and stuff, mammogram referrals. They can be helpful, especially for people of low incomes. But when you get to the point where you're trying to eliminate the very identity of the people that you predominantly help. Yes, men can get STD screening there too, but most of those services generally, like mammograms and stuff, that tends to be for females. When you get to the point where you're so woke that you're trying to eliminate your entire clientele, or like 90% of them, don't you think there's a fucking problem with you? Jesus Christ. I think there's a problem with them. I think maybe they should shut the fuck up. Do what you're good at. Giving referrals for various healthcare, cancer screenings, doing STD screenings, etc. Providing condoms to the poor and stuff like that. Those are good things. Why don't you just stick to that and stop trying to insert yourself deliberately into political issues which are beyond your ken? No, men do not get pregnant. Just to be clear, anti-woke here, men don't get pregnant. And if you have a cervix, well, that terminology may not apply. You could have a dick and a cervix, I suppose, after surgery or something like that, but you have a female reproductive organ. It's still menstruating, I guess. You can still get pregnant. That would apply. Why do you have to attempt to eliminate womanhood entirely from your literature? I seem to recall like 5 years ago, it was all about women's rights. Now I guess that's not a thing anymore. So, yeah. Crazy Loon, thanks to a snow day, I am able to catch you live. Yeah, there's no snow here. There never is. It snowed like in the entire time I've been in the Netherlands, maybe 4 times in total, including once much earlier this year, back in November, I think it was. Preamble, are you wearing 3 layers of clothing? What the hell is going on? Because right now there's a wash going, and so all of my comfy, cozy, wear is in the wash, and so I'm wearing 2 t-shirts instead. Liz and I, we get along really well, but over the temperature in the house, we do deviate. She likes it a lot colder than I like it. I've already amped it up, by the way, and it's still cool for my standards. I like the temperatures to be effectively tropical. I do not do well with cold. I work much harder. I focus much more easily when I'm goddamn sweating than when I'm shivering. So I got several layers on. The jacket's just for show, though, of course. Muddy Drip 6665. As a Christian, I agree with your earlier video about prayer. I am not a fan of Christians who either just believing in Jesus is enough, either all in or nothing. Yes, that's biblical. And that was what I was pointing out. I had some people claiming that I was mocking Christianity by pointing out if you intend to be a Christian, there is literally a warning there about being a lukewarm Christian. It would be better to not be a Christian at all and remain ignorant of that particular path than to delve into it, but say, well, all I really have to do is occasionally tithe and I pray a couple times a day. It's not the meaning of prayer. Boris P. Thoughts on AI replacing us all? How long until we can never tell if we're talking to a real person again? We might end up in Blade Runner, is unfortunately the case. Eric writes, Boris P., we're already there, bud. What a time to be alive. Yeah, just think of how it'll be in 10 years. Mike Hunt, I hate my Gen Z. My generation is lost for us. No, hope is not lost for Gen Z. They said the same about millennials. Some millennials, are still out to lunch, and some of us decided to wake up. Same with any generation. Richard III, women have served their purpose now. They have to go, I guess. Yeah, it seems. Yes, Planned Parenthood comes out against womanhood. What reality have we jumped to? Boycott Warhammer Plus. Afternoon, Sticks. Your earlier video today on Christian prayer as a state of mind was great. It resonated with me, which is weird as I am not religious. Yeah, I'm just pointing out my biblical understanding. I got reamed for it on New Tech, specifically the BitChute commentary. Go over there and see what those goofballs are saying. It's mostly people who fucking hate me. Crazy Loon. By the way, Sticks, what do you think about Shriners? I don't have any real thoughts about the Shriners. Kick the ball. Or abortions should be legal until children can prove they're viable by proving they're financially independent and move out. I'm sure there are some parents out there that would actually support that unironically. No, I think that it should be at the point of viability. So if you can deliver the child and there's not a massive risk of them being all fucked up, you should deliver the child. It may not be, necessarily, unless there's a problem with the woman's health that necessitates abortion in that case. Generally, you would default to a cesarean section at that point. If it's at the point of viability, give it a chance. That's all you have to do. You can have a separate bill that prevents the woman from having any legal obligations. If you want to do that, that's fine. It may be sad in some cases, but again, I'm not going to look down on some 14-year-old who gets knocked up aborting. I refuse to do that. I'm not ever going to be aboard with the far-right discourse on the issue. I don't render it as a moral issue in that purpose. I render it as a moral issue for the woman, mainly. But if you do have viability, if you have waited 5 fucking months, 6 fucking months, give it a chance. Allow the doctors to attempt to keep it alive. Maybe there's a family out there who can't have kids. They can adopt. It's not the best of scenarios, but it's better than the alternatives, in my opinion. Lepco92, caught you live because I called in having fallen down 13 icy stairs, planked on my back all the way down, but didn't break anything. Charmed life, did a Smollett. I didn't drop my coffee thermos. You should still be at work, says the boss man. How dare you? The Defamation League. In one of your occult vids, you mentioned dream interpretation. What is your take on falling asleep in a dream and immediately waking up in real life? Never had that happen before. Any significance in your opinion? No, falling asleep in a dream, I don't believe actually really has an interpretation. Well, at least I haven't stumbled across it. John Brown sent 199. No comment. Thank you very much. And by the way, to Jam, 14-year-olds can actually get raped, and then some of them do actually have intercourse. Believe it or not, teenagers do fuck each other, just to be clear. Next news story, all GOP senators and Machin, that's the big point here, challenge Biden's ESG climate investment rule politicizing Americans' 401ks. Yes, Joe Manchin, once again, he has done it. He has joined the GOP on this particular bill, not in the party sense. What Biden wants to do is take ESG, which is effectively woke investing, and apply it to Americans' 401k plans, or at least allow it to be applied or encourage it to be applied. And Manchin has come out saying that doesn't sound like a great idea because these are people's retirement savings. They should really be exempt from that sort of thing. Personally, I think that ESG shouldn't exist at all. Unfortunately, there's no real methodology to completely get rid of it. The idea is environment, social, and governance. And the idea is that a company will be lent or not lent money. Investment will be made or not made, partially based on wokeness. So you've put enough effort into green energy. So you've put a bunch of solar panels on your factory. Or you've hired people to look like a bowl of Skittles. You have enough diversity, so-called. Or you've supported some sort of governmental cause that supposedly, it's a human rights or something like that. That's the basic idea. And if you engage in that behavior, you get money. If you don't engage in that behavior, other than small businesses that aren't really, they're not really part of the investment thing, if you're a corporation of any style, you're then bound to that basic premise. Manchin is now joining the Republicans in questioning whether that should be the case for investment firms that work with people's retirement funds. I think it's a terrible idea to apply it to 401ks, of all things in the world that you don't want to apply them to. And keep in mind, this is the same administration right now bitching about Republicans' statements about Social Security. So if the Republicans want to reform, and I don't, by the way, I don't approve of their specific reforms that they have in mind, but to tinker with Social Security, which applies to people. They retire, they're drawing Social Security so they can make ends meet, although they never do. Supposedly, on paper, the principle is there. That's evil. That's terrible. But if you say that the companies that are actually doing the investment for people as part of their retirement plans outside of Social Security, that they should be bound to wokeness, which will drive up costs, which will make things more onerous, which will make things potentially less efficient, that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's something the Biden administration explicitly endorses and is now pushing. Now Manchin is attempting to push back against the rule. If Manchin holds his ground, something interesting happens. You cannot even get people necessarily appointed without Kamala's blessing, and of course Sinema exists too, just to keep in mind, unless you appease him. So you might end up having to parse out the ESG rule because Joe Manchin is raising a stink over it. He's siding with the 49 Republicans in the Senate that are there at the moment. That would be a big problem for the woke Democrats. Of course, they're going to try to primary him, I have no doubt. By the way, I see Yolk Nick. Yolk Nick. Yeah, Tarl, you remember some of our classmates from MRU being like rabbits. LMAO. Yeah, some of them were getting it on back in high school. Let's see here. I did John Brown. You don't get it twice. You didn't even leave a comment. Eric writes, while we're on the topic of dreams, I wonder if you've also had dreams where you fall and jump and descend from a high place, and just as you're about to hit the ground, spring awake. Woo, yeah, it's wild. I think that happened to me exactly once. I've had a significant number of lucid dreams more lately, in which I can control sort of my, well, not really my body, but my ethereal, my astral body, as it were. It's actually blissful. There was a while there for a few months it was happening fairly regularly. It's a lot less now. I don't know exactly why that was triggered. Tony XXX, what are your thoughts on the farming ban happening in the Netherlands at current day? Thank you for the work that you do. Well, there's not really a farming ban, so to speak. What they're trying to do is take a bunch of people's property. And at first, they're going to offer them money. They've offered them considerably more than spot for their farms. Apparently, none of them have sold. That was a tip I got the other day. If that doesn't work, they might try to up the total and try to grab some of the land. They might attempt to confiscate it, although I'm not sure there's a legal methodology in the Netherlands by which they can. So we'll see what happens with that. Richard III, according to Google, falling asleep in your dream can represent a lack of focus or awareness. Interesting. Next news story. This is an opinion piece, and I just thought that I would rip it apart here. Newsrooms that move beyond objectivity can build trust. Yes, this entire article, again, links in the description, mostly archived, that you can go through here. Leonard Downey Jr., a former executive editor of the WAPO, is a professor at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State. Former executive editor of WAPO. I wonder why this would be your opinion. The basic premise is that you should abandon objectivity in reporting, and there are two reasons given. Number one, Orange Man bad. That's literally what this boils down to. And number two, because the Zoomers and the younger kids don't want objective reporting. They want more opinion pieces. That's basically it. We should abandon the concept of journalistic ethics in trying to actually report what is factual in favor of pushing a line to make more money and because there are certain people that we just don't fucking like. That's literally what this stresses. Read the article for yourself if you don't believe me. On the long side, but it's doable. I just wanted to throw that in there. It's not exactly a major news story, but I had to give you that goddamn link. You have to read that. Your eyes will bug out of your head, probably, some of you. especially if you took any journalism classes. Eric writes, according to Google, Biden is president. Yeah, that's the problem. You can no longer rely on them. I choose to use other search engines myself. By the way, if you hear beeping in the background, the dryer has finally gone off. I would take care of it, but I've got news to cover. There's nothing I can do. I'm completely hamstrung here. Next news story. This is WSJ opinion, actually. And this comes from J.D. Vance, of course, running for political office recently. Trump's best foreign policy, not starting any wars. He has my support in 24 because I know he won't recklessly send Americans to fight overseas. I admire J.D. Vance for being willing at a fairly early stage, when you don't know exactly what the Republican field's going to be, backing Trump. That's number one. Number two, it's a point that doesn't get stressed enough. Right now, we have multiple foreign policy problems around the world for the United States. You have the looming potential war between China and Taiwan. That would be the end-all, be-all, by the way. You have Russia invading Ukraine. You have the dust up there. You have all sorts of other crises. Burkina Faso, as I pointed out a few days ago, when they expel the French from their country, they're probably gearing up to kill a bunch of political dissidents. Not 100% certain, but it's likely. And so I've just preliminarily predicted that's likely to be the case. You have all sorts of problems around the world right now. Were most of these problems present when Donald Trump was the president of the United States? Did he send additional soldiers into any foray around the world? Or did he sit back and, oddly enough, he used a dimmed down version of the Obama policy, which was mainly remote, it was drone-based, etc., to reinforce the handful of troops that he maintained in these regions? Well, the latter, quite clearly. It's not perfect. As a person myself who is deeply non-interventionist while not being a complete pacifist, I understand the United States has no choice but to police sea lanes, for example. There are occasions, although they're sporadic, in which we should intervene in a foreign country. There's a genocide going on. You can think about doing that. You've been invited to participate by a standing government that's your ally, and there's an insurgency. That's possibly acceptable. It depends on the circumstances. As a non-peacenik, but a non-interventionist, I would say this. Donald Trump's approach, while not fully perfect, was much better than anything that we've seen in a long time. It was better than the Clinton era, the Herbert Walker era, the W era, the Obama era. Going back, it was better than the Reagan era. Donald Trump did better on foreign policy in some respects than Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan is held up on a goddamn pedestal by all of the uniparty stooge neocons. Oh my God, the Gipper, he was such a great guy. Ronald Reagan didn't do as well in foreign policy. He said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. That is memorialized as one of the quips of the modern time. And yet Donald Trump, who managed to solve effectively the ISIS crisis, rapprochement with North Korea, leaning heavily on Russia, they weren't invading Ukraine at the time, leaning on multiple nations without having to fire a shot, who accomplished more than goddamn Ronald Reagan in 2 terms in his single term, is not memorialized for these things. Absolutely. On a foreign policy scale alone, let's say you're worried about Pfizer or something like that. You don't like Trump because he didn't build enough wall. Anything domestic. You have to give him credit for foreign policy. There's no option other than that. You have to give him credit unless you're a war hawk. I mean, if you're John McCain, you probably fucking hate the job that Donald Trump did. Everything else, foreign policy related, 8 out of 10 easily. That a great president, maybe not perfect, not at all times. There were still drone strikes. We still armed the Saudis against Yemen, etc. That being said, generally speaking, you couldn't have asked for more, unless you're asking for perfection, and you're never going to get it anyway. So I admire J.D. Vance for being willing to do this. Mike Hunt, one political issue you've changed your mind on. Interesting. Let me think. Well, I was less, no, that's not really a change. You've got me flummoxed almost. I would say guns, actually. I was less pro-gun maybe 10 years ago. I didn't want to get rid of all gun control a decade ago. I guess I've changed on that. I've come to the conclusion that no gun control is acceptable of any kind. Mainly because I studied the Constitution more. Eric writes, oh God, why is this an option? Please do your best. Chicken pie, salt cheese, shrimp scooter, heart, gift. At this point, I'd support making emojis illegal. Yeah, I'm thinking that I lean in your direction. I'm a libertarian. Muddy Drip 6665. Opinion on the Eliza Blue controversy going on. All of it doesn't pass the smell test to me. There is something deeply, deeply bizarre about that particular story, but I don't know enough about it to weigh in, other than I say the quartering and Brittany Venti should not face repercussions for posting a fucking picture of a publicly available video. It's clearly under fair use. Richard III. Thoughts on Soul Trap theory? Oh, you're talking about Skyrim, I think. Soul Trap is a good spell. No, actually, beyond that, I have no clue what you're talking about. It's fun to rip the souls out of elk and goblins and shit like that. Well, they're not goblins, but whatever they're called. Ripping the souls out of people helps you enchant weapons and armor. Well, if it's useful, then use it. Next news story. Actually, the next two stories are both about cows, which is hilarious. Government reports one case of mad cow disease on a Dutch farm. The Dutch government says a cow that died recently on a Dutch farm that's here in the Netherlands tested positive for mad cow disease, in a rare case of the cattle illness that can cause fatal brain disease in people who eat tainted beef. By the way, mainly processed meat. It affects, let me explain in brief what mad cow is. Mad cow is prions. That is a misfolded brain protein, and it doesn't break down easily in the digestive system or under heat, so cooking the meat doesn't necessarily help you. It might reduce the number of the prions, but if the animal is infected, you can get it. A misfolded brain protein, DNA expression uses proteins. Proteins are all over in your brain, and these help everything to function. Your cells need proteins to survive. Under the right conditions, a protein that has been misfolded through mutation or whatever effect can misfold other proteins by simply coming into contact with them. That is, that you have one misfolded brain protein, it hits another brain protein just at the right angle. The actual molecular structure of it causes the other protein to deform. It can no longer do the normal protein job. It's not doing anything useful. It then hits another one and another and another, and they multiply over time. It's not guaranteed that that happens, but it can. When you eat meat that's tainted by prions, therefore, you run a grave risk. And this normally comes from using feed that involves the bone tissue and meat of animals being refed to other animals. If it contains any prions, it can multiply within that population. Those animals potentially then get ground up. There are more prions in the next generation. Eventually, you can have a mass outbreak. Now, this has been almost eradicated since the panic over prions 20 years ago. I can remember that myself. It's very rare that there are cases. You are not at risk, thankfully. This is one animal. It may be an atypical case, which means it's not part of the food supply. Most of the meat that you eat is probably not going to give you prions, like a steak or something. Processed meat would be the main vector. And they do a pretty good job at checking for it. So there is mad cow disease for the first time in, God, I can't remember how many fucking years in the Netherlands. You have had outbreaks of it before. Mostly they're related to bad feeding practices. The problem is that if it's not an atypical case, it could be related to a bad feeding practice, and there could have been people exposed to it. That's the problem. It's not likely, but it's possible. At this time, we're preparing to have meatballs tonight. I'm not particularly worried about this. Also, it takes many, many years for the symptoms to form. So if people start, dropping down like zombies, unable to walk or something, then you might have a problem. But they were exposed long, long ago. So yes, mad cow disease in a nutshell. Maybe I should do like a lecture series on medical topics or something. Even just from my AP Bio perspective, I think I know enough to be able to give a few basic lectures on stuff. That'd be kind of fun. Maybe I'll do a poll later on Twitter. You should join me on Twitter, by the way. The site is generally better, although there are still a few sticking points. Should I do a science series? Lepco92, politics is the one field where you can get drummed out for just kind of doing your actual job, yet workplace theft and incompetence is A-okay. Evangelist Dr. Robert L. McKim Sr. Sticks told all you Christians what's up on Rumble. Yes. Shark dentures, don't panic. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Eric writes, want to ban cows? Fine by me. Milk AOC instead. That's disgusting, my man. Red Muskrat, how do you feel about Dave Smith and Mises Caucus? I like the Mises Caucus, and Dave Smith is pretty cool. I don't agree with every principle they have. That being said, they are better than the last generation of so-called libertarians with Bill Weld and people like that. At least you have principles. Even if I disagree with them, at least you're holding to them. That makes sense. Crazy Loon, what do you think about Scientology? I believe that Project Chinology answered that question many, many years ago. It's a cult. It's a pile of horse shit. It's a bunch of pseudoscience. And it engages in literal cult-like practices and then attempts to sue people for defamation for pointing it out. They will get no respect from me. Ozzy's Robots. Amazing, a bunch of oligarch billionaires have quickly dumbed down, brainwashed, and enlisted millions of lemmings from all generations to accept things like woke trash and no objectivity in journalism. Yeah, can you imagine being taken seriously when you're saying that journalism should abandon journalism? Because that's basically the gist of that article when you think about it. Crazy Loon, read Dianetics and have to say there are 15th century grimoires that make more sense even in their old dialect. Yeah, don't ask a Scientologist about Xenu, by the way. The volcano-dwelling demigod or whatever the fuck he is. Next story is also about cows. This one doesn't have to do with disease, though, although it has to do with the disease of communism. China says it successfully cloned 3 highly productive super cows. Yes, the Chinese are now tinkering with cow DNA to make them produce more milk. Chinese scientists have successfully cloned 3 super cows that can produce an unusually high amount of milk. State media reported. That'll be important in our analysis here. Hailing it as a breakthrough for China's dairy industry to reduce its dependence on imported breeds. Now, let's say that none of these people are lying. So the state media is not simply putting this out there to flex on other nations. What could be the reason why you have these super cows that you've cloned? You've got a sample size of 3. So is it beyond the realm of possibility, beyond the pale to suggest that these 3 cows, simply because of their lab upbringing, getting the proper nutrients, etc., they're not being raised out on a pasture somewhere by somebody with an 8th grade education. They're getting raised in a laboratory, presumably, or on a lab farm. Don't you think that maybe they're going to have excessive milk production because they're simply healthier and better cared for? There's only 3 of them. So we're assuming that this story is true, and already you can see one fatal flaw with this data. I am deeply suspicious of this particular story. China has claimed things like this before, as have other nations, by the way. Well, we've developed this great, the North Koreans with developing a multi-stage nuclear weapon. Well, no, you didn't. You developed either a boosted weapon or you upsized the weapon, showing you have more nuclear material. You don't have a modern nuclear weapon capable of achieving miniaturization, at least not yet. The Iranians with some of their missile development. The United States putting out propaganda saying, well, we've developed this. The Russians with, what is it there? They got nuclear torpedoes to cause tidal waves. Well, nuclear torpedoes make sense. The size of the tidal wave involved may be up for debate. The United States, with some of its medical claims, especially over the last few years, no less, the Raelians claimed that they got cloned to human back in, the early 2000s. And then they never produced the person that they supposedly had cloned. So, yeah, I'm questioning whether this is actually, proper research. I'm questioning, and number one, just because you clone the cows and you change their genetic structure doesn't necessarily mean, even if all of this, the rest of it's true, that doesn't necessitate that they produce more milk. You're assuming that based on 3 research subjects. That's not a proper sample size. You need hundreds. Go back to get more cows, clone more cows, and then show me writ large that you can increase milk production by 10% or something like that. Maybe it's possible. The cow's stomach digests cellulose more quickly. It metabolizes it more easily. You feed them more feed, you get more milk. That's perfectly wonderful. It sounds great. You'll have more milk. Not that we can't just get a couple of extra cows, but we'll see what the differential is. I'm questioning whether the news story is true. Sweet heaven. Most dangerous person in the world. Most dangerous person in the world. I mean, today, I'm assuming. Well, there are a number of them. Basically, any executive leader with access to nuclear weapons would come to mind. that would be the most dangerous person in the world. But there's more. It's an oligarchy of danger. Apache, Abby Shapiro can be a kosher option for lactose. I don't understand all the people that simp for these chicks. I just, I don't know. I don't understand it. Someone had, oh, you've never seen boobs before? Oh my God, she has breasts. Quick, she's hot. Okay, that's in the eye of the beholder, my dude. Do Elmo, elites worship demons. Is that evidence gods exist? No, elites do not worship demons. Most of them are atheists, to be clear. Their god is money and power. Donna K, thank you for your analysis of world news. You're very welcome. Eric writes, so what I'm hearing is that China cloned 3 AOCs. Oh God, is Milkers going to be the new Sticks adjacent meme at this point? Oh Christ. Yolk Nick, so not talking about white people being beaten or killed by cops doesn't mean, means it doesn't happen, at least according to Whoopi and Reverend Nell. LMAO. Yes, I talked about that yesterday. For those that didn't catch that, thank you, Nick. Whoopi Goldberg came out and said, well, white people are only going to talk about these police beatings when white people get beaten up. I'm like, there are a million examples of white people getting beaten and shot and shit by cops. You had that one dude years ago, that one roid-addled cop was yelling random orders at him while he was already completely compliant on his knees with his hands up and still shot him. You had a case not that long ago where a dude, his home got raided. He had his hands up. He was unarmed. Quite clearly, they shot him too. He survived, by the way, so that's going to be a juicy lawsuit. He's not going to have any problem in recovery. And then they started panicking because they noticed that there were cameras around. I'm surprised they didn't try to shoot the cameras out. So yeah, Whoopi Goldberg and people like that, they are racist against white people. Just to be clear, they are. And yes, you can be racist against white people. We generally understand that unless we're, completely retarded. Next, we've got our last news story. How sad. Talk about Nina Turner's bullshit. Black history should be taught. That shouldn't be controversial. That's what she says. Nina Turner, of course, educator, activist, senior fellow at Race Power Policy. I thought racial power was a bad idea. It sounds a little bit Ku Klux Klan-like, but we'll get over that. Former Ohio State Senator and professor, host of Unbossed at the Young Turks. Young Turks adjacent individual who runs a Black Power movement, I guess, is saying this. I actually agree with her. Black history should absolutely be taught in schools. I would note that white history tends not to be taught, but we can address that separately. Here's what she's referring to, though. This is in reference to DeSantis in Florida mainly. The fact that states are beginning to wise up to the fact that Marxist indoctrination is being taught in schools is being parsed out right now. Critical race theory is not Black history. Critical race theory is a subversive conceptualization with multiple points, one of which it's influenced by Marxism. Another one literally says basically Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and people like that were idiots and didn't accomplish anything. They shouldn't have been pushing for equality. They should have been pushing for reparations, is effectively the case. I pointed out earlier that people should do this. When that relative shows up at the Christmas meal or whatever, the NPR cup wielder, the stuffy sweater wearer, the one that turns their thermostat down when they listen to NPR to save energy, the one obsessed with kale smoothies and with avocado toast, the Starbucks Marxist. When that relative comes to the table and starts rambling about how CRT is a good thing or DeSantis and Donald Trump are racist or something, just point out one very important thing because it's explicitly part of CRT, which is that critical race theory promotes the concept that Martin Luther King was a goddamn loser. And watch, if they're over 40, I guarantee that their heads will spin. They're not going to take it too well. They'll probably splutter and then ask you to explain and provide your sources. Well, then you can hand them a copy of Critical Race Theory Debunked by yours truly. Just to be clear, get it on Amazon. I'd put the link in the description, but I'm too lazy at the moment. Critical race theory is bullshit. And it's been exposed as bullshit. And there's a reason why the vast majority of people in the United States don't support teaching it in schools. If you want to do it in a private school, that's fine. You can indoctrinate people into religion in a private school. Why can't you do the same for communism? Okay, you want to make a bunch of brainwashed lemmings that don't know shit from Shinola? That's perfectly fine. It shouldn't be tax funded. You can go ahead and teach your kids about your commie bullshit. Oh, wait, communists tend to not get any pussy, so they're not having as many kids. They have to indoctrinate others and reproduce like parasites, mostly. The Oracle 8191. Speaking of prions, how about that spike protein from the honk honk? I can't say that. Adam Gertner and Jicky Leaks are great follows for this kind of info. Unbreaded. Yeah, some people are claiming that there is a connection between prions and honk honk. Just to be clear, I don't have any evidence to back that up, but people are pointing out the possibility. Apache, speaking of corrupt cops, did you see that Afro Man made a song about the cops raiding his home and used his security footage as the music video? You could do worse. Yeah. Why did they raid Afro Man? Probably drug related, but just to be clear. Yeah, once again, a shit ton of people watching over on Rumble. 1492, what a great year. When Columbus went over, never discovered America, but then enslaved a bunch of island dwellers. Armed Triad members, says Snoopy. Yeah, so Nina Turner is, she's right. Black history should be taught in schools. There's nothing wrong with that. Black history, Asian history, Hispanic history. That's an ethnicity, not a race. White history should be taught in schools as well. They're cope for that, by the way, when you point that out as well. All of this history is white history. Okay, yeah, necessarily there's nobody who's non-Caucasian as part of any history curricula in the general. Of course. There's a reason why you don't want to teach that one. If you were being honest, you'd have to teach people, hey, by the way, white people aren't all a bunch of evil bigots who want to keep you in chains or something like that. That's why they don't want to teach it. Anyway, I think I'm going to go offline now. I've had a lot of fun with this particular slew. Tomorrow, I may or may not live stream. We do have a couple of Liz's relatives coming over. I'm going to make my fried chicken because it came out so fucking good before, and it's going to be a crowd pleaser. Probably some, Cajun sweet potatoes or home fries. I haven't decided which one I'm going to make. Got to go out and get the ingredients later tonight, actually, because I want to make the chicken up, get it battered and stuff really early. So I don't want to have to go out to the store before I begin prepping the food tomorrow. So it's going to be a good time. The thing is, my fried chicken's better than KFC. You'd probably like it too. I took the advice of many subscribers telling me to use panko crumbs on the outside. That's a good idea, just to be clear. Lots and lots of herbs and spices. That's about all. Peace out.